Welcome back to the Undiscovered Games video podcast, where we take a look at the lesser-known board games of the world and share those with you. Today, maybe I should call it the Indus-Covered Games podcast, because we're looking at a game called Indus from the year 2004. Now, the channel members will be surprised to see this episode, because Indus was on a recent member vote, where I've been having the members vote on some of the lowest-rated games in my collection. Indus is a 5.6 out of 10 over on Board Game Geek, and it's ranked like 23,000 overall. So it's a very low-rated game. And I've had the members vote on several low-rated games just to force me to get them off the shelf, play them once or twice, and offer a casual first impressions review for the members. Well, Indus was on one of those member polls, and it was winning the poll pretty well up until the very last couple hours. Well, I was pretty confident it was going to win, so I went ahead and played Indus with my game group, and then it ended up not winning. But we had already played the game, and we all kind of liked it, and we wanted to play it again and again and again. And we ended up playing 4 games in a row that first night, and then we brought it to every other game night for the rest of the week. We usually meet about 4 nights a week, and this was our warm-up game every single game night last week. So this one is definitely a keeper. Now, it's not the best game ever, but it's one of those perfect like filler plus games. It comes in right around 30 to 40 minutes max. Now, the box says 45 to 60 minutes, and we have never had a game go longer than 45, even when we were learning the game. So this is a rare case where the game is actually shorter than the time printed on the box, and for me that's a big selling point because the game really packs a mean little punch into about 30 minutes. It works really well at 2, 3, and 4 players, and it's just a game I can see getting a lot of table time because first of all, we love rolling dice, and then you have this mean cutthroat area control going on the board with lots of different scoring objectives to go for, and the board changes every time you play, so it's always a different setup, and that just makes this game so replayable. It makes you want to try again and again and again. So a very addictive little design here. Even though it's like a push your luck dice game, it still has some grit and some teeth to it, some really meaningful choices to make that will appeal more to the gamers out there, even though it's also kind of like a lighter casual game at the same time. So I think it's got a very wide audience appeal, which is another big selling point for me, and it plays well at all player counts, which is another plus. Now, if I had to guess why this game did not become more popular, I would say it's probably because the board is very confusing at first. It's really hard to visualize how everything scores. Now, I think it's cool how they designed it because aesthetically it looks like, you're going out to these archaeological dig sites in the Indus River Valley and you're trying to extract these artifacts. So visually it makes sense with the theme, but it's a headache to try to explain and visualize how this thing scores. So what I've done is I've created a player aid and I've uploaded that over on Board Game Geek. You can go download that, print it out in full color, and keep it with your game. And I think it will help you teach and remember how to play the game without having to consult the rulebook. So that link will be in the video description below, and that is free to download. So let me teach you how to play Indus real quick. It's very simple to learn and teach, and then I'll continue to talk about why this is an undiscovered game you might want to check out. Before we get started, make sure you are subscribed right here on YouTube at undiscovered_games to learn more about lesser known games like Indus. I play through hundreds of games each year just searching for the next hidden gem to feature on this channel, and the channel members have been helping me a lot with that, so thank you to all the UGOGs for your direct support of this channel to help keep it alive. And to all my loyal subscribers out there, thank you again for sticking with me and joining me on this journey to discover the undiscovered. This is a journey together to find and share lesser known games and also update the video archives on a lot of these old and forgotten games like Indus that just did not get videos. So that's kind of my mission here, is to make sure games like this do not get buried and lost in the past. So let me teach you how to play Indus. It's a very easy game to learn and teach, and then I'll continue to review the game and talk about what I like and dislike and show why this is an undiscovered game you might want to check out. To set up the game, each player takes their supply of wooden discs. These are called your explorers. So each player starts with a certain number of these based on player count. There are 3 different thicknesses of these discs. We have the 1-star, which are your workers. Those are the thin discs. We have the 2-star, which are your assistants. These are the middle-sized disc. And then we have the 3-star, which are your professors. These are the thick discs. So in a 4-player game, each player takes 6 workers, 4 assistants, and 2 professors in their player color. In a 3-player game, each player gets 8 workers, 5 assistants, and 3 professors. In a 2-player game, each player controls 2 different colors, and in each color, they take 6, 4, and 2, the same as the 4-player setup, except they will have 2 sets of discs. And any unused explorers just go back to the box, you will not need them. Sort these archaeological finds by their values and make a general supply near the game board. These are just your victory points, so when you collect points, you will collect tokens from this supply. Now this game board is set up differently every time you play, and you just kind of randomly pick pieces to assemble together. There is a recommended setup in the rulebook for your very first game, but I'll show you how to do the modular setup. The first thing you do is shuffle these square tiles and pick one at random and place it face up in the center of the table. Now you will randomly draw the corner tiles to wrap around this, but when you place them, you have to make sure that all the pathways line up. For example, we cannot have this canal running straight into a stone pathway like this. You have to make sure that a stone path lines up with a stone path, and a wood path lines up with a wood path, etc., etc. Most of the time, these tiles will line up just the way they're designed, but every once in a while, you might have to discard one and draw a new one, or maybe rotate it to a different corner of the map, however you want to do that. But once you have all those pathways lined up, then you can make the frame around the map like this. The frame just shows these rocky circular areas. These are your starting spaces for your explorers. So anytime you place a new explorer, it has to go on one of these little rocky spaces. The last part of setup is placing our starting explorers. So you choose a start player, and they will choose any one of their explorers and place it on any one of these start spaces. Then you go clockwise, and each player places one explorer at a time on any open starting space. You cannot go where there's already another explorer. Now, in a 4-player game, you would do this twice around the table so that each player has 2 starting explorers out on the edge of this board somewhere. In a 3-player game, you do this 3 times around the table, and in a 2-player game, you go 4 times around the table, but 2 per color, and you can do those 2 colors in any order that you choose. So now you're all set up and ready to play. From here on out, the 3 and the 4-player game work exactly the same way. However, there are some rules changes for 2 players, and I'll try to highlight those at the end of this tutorial. So during the tutorial, I will be showing you a 4-player game. Give the start player this D6 and they will take their turn. Turns are always clockwise around the table. When you're finished with your turn, you can pass the D6 to the next player and they will take their turn. The game will continue until all the explorers have either entered the play area or have been removed from the game from being captured. So that means there are no more explorers in the player's supplies and no more explorers on the perimeter frame of the board. As soon as that happens, the game ends and we tally up our final scores. The scoring is the most important thing to wrap your head around, so I'll go over that here in a little bit. But first, I need to explain the 3 steps of your turn. When it's your turn, you always perform these 3 steps in this order. Step 1, place a new explorer. Step 2, roll the die. Step 3, move an explorer onto the grid. Let's look at these steps in detail. Step 1, place a new explorer. You can take any one of your explorers, so any level, 1 star, 2 star, or 3 stars. Take one of those discs from your personal supply and place it on any open starting space, just like we did during the setup round. So very simply put, you cannot choose a space that already has an explorer. Now I go to step 2, which is roll the die. I roll this D6 once, and I have to decide to either accept that result or roll a second time. If I roll a second time, I have to accept the second result, and I can roll a third time, but then I would have to accept the third result. So that's all you do during step 2. You either roll this die 1, 2, or 3 times, and I'll explain why you might want to do that here in the next step. Step 3 is move one of your explorers. So you take any one of your explorers that's on the edge of the board here, and you move them in a straight line as many spaces as you rolled on the die. But there's a catch. Depending on how many times you rolled that die, that determines which pieces you're allowed to move. So if you just rolled the die once, you can move any one of your explorers. However, if you rolled the die 2 times, you can only move your 2-star or your 3-star explorers. And if you rolled the die 3 times, you can only move your 3-star explorer. Now, when you move an explorer, they have to be on a starting space. So you cannot move an explorer that's already in the map here. So each of these discs will only move 1 time the entire game. If you look closely at the board, you'll see it's a 6x6 grid of squares, and the rows and columns all correspond to these starting spaces. So whenever you move an explorer, it always starts from the starting place, and then you count that many squares in a straight line from the starting place. You have to use your full die movement, and you can freely move through other discs on your way to your destination. Multiple discs can be on a square, so whenever you end your movement, if there are other discs there, you just jump on top of the stack. If you're by yourself, you just stay put, and other players might jump on top of you. Now this is where the game gets mean and good. So there is a capturing rule in this game, which says as soon as you get your second disc on the same square, you immediately capture all opponents who are also on that square. Furthermore, if you have 2 or more discs on a square already and an opponent lands on your square, you immediately capture them automatically. Whenever you capture an opponent's disc, that disc is removed from the game and you get to score 1 point per star on the captured discs. Now let me show you how this capturing thing works in practice. I'll give you a couple examples. It's very easy to see once you watch it play out. Now let's say the board is set up like this. I'm the blue player and it's my turn. Step 1, I place one of my explorers out on the board. Maybe I want to use my 2-star person, so that will give me 2 rolls to get what I want. So maybe I put them here like this. I'm looking at this stack of explorers here because I have a disc there and 2 of my opponents also have discs there. So if I can get my explorer to land on that spot, then I will immediately capture both of my opponents and score some points. Now this is not the only thing to consider when you're placing your explorers out there. I haven't even talked about the scoring yet, but I'm just trying to show you an example of the capture. Now, if you look over here, I already have one of my 1-star workers on the side here. So if I roll a 2 on my very first roll, I could move this worker onto this stack and immediately capture my opponents. However, by putting my 2-star person here, I'm giving myself some more chances to capture my opponents because this one I could move on my first or second roll. So I basically have 2 chances to roll a 4 or 1 chance to roll a 2. So let's see how it plays out. I roll, I got a 3. So right now I could stop. I could move any one of my explorers exactly 3 spaces, but maybe I want to push my luck a little bit and try to get that 4. So I roll again and I get the 4. Now remember, I don't even have the option of moving my 1-star workers anymore. So now I have to move a 2-star or a 3-star explorer. Well, obviously I'm going to move my 2-star because I get to capture. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Because that's my second disc on that square, I immediately capture all of my opponents there. I take their discs and remove them from the game, count up all the stars on the captured discs. There are 4 stars, so I immediately get 4 points from the supply and place those in front of me. My 2 discs now stay there, and from now on, if any opponents land on that space exactly, they will be instantly captured by me and I will score points again. So by getting 2 discs on a square, you are basically locking that down for yourself for the rest of the game. Nobody else will ever be able to get their discs on that square. So in that way, the board kind of shrinks later in the game and it creates some really fun little traps out there that you have to weigh when you're deciding where to place your explorers and how much you want to push your luck. So anyway, let's keep this example going and I'll show you how this might play out. After my turn, it becomes yellow's turn. Step 1, they place an explorer. Let's say they place their 3-star explorer here because they are trying to go for a capture over here. Now this is risky and I'll show you why. Let's say they roll the die and they get a 1. Now right now they can move any one of their explorers 1 space. They don't like the looks of that, so they're going to roll again. Now they got a 6. So their only choices are to move this professor or assistant 6 spaces, or they could push their luck and roll one more time, but then whatever they get, they have to move their professor. Let's say they roll that 3rd time, hoping for a 3 so they can get a capture here, but instead they get a 4. Now they are forced to move this piece 1, 2, 3, 4. They fall into my trap. I immediately capture them and I take 3 points from the supply. Again, it's 1 per star that you capture. This disc is removed from the game and they push their luck too far. It's worth noting you can only roll a 2nd or 3rd time if you have assistants and professors out there. You always have to move a piece after you roll your dice. So if you only had your level 1 workers out there, you can't even roll a 2nd time because you would not have a piece that you can move. Now remember, I have not even explained the scoring objectives, and that's the biggest reason you want to get your discs in certain areas of this grid. Obviously, you want to try to, capture your opponents and set those little traps, but you're really trying to get in position for the endgame scoring, which is kind of like area majority. So let me walk you through the endgame scoring, and this should bring it all together. So like I said, after the final disc leaves this perimeter and there are no more discs on the perimeter or in the player's supply, that will be the final turn of the game. At that point, the game ends and we tally up the final scores. Now, I've summarized the final scoring on this player reference guide, and you can just go step by step here, and it's pretty easy to do. But the trickiest part of this is when you first see this board, it's going to be very difficult to visualize how this all scores. I think this is probably why this game did not become more popular, because it's just kind of a headache at first. But once it clicks, I promise you, it's not that difficult. So if you look at the map, you will find all these different ruins, and oftentimes the ruins will span multiple squares of this grid. The whole idea is you want to have control of these ruins, and whoever has control will get the points or the artifacts from them. So let me talk about the different types of ruins. First, we have buildings. These are like the red brick color. On our map here, we have 3 different buildings. We have this cluster over here, we have this cluster here, and we have this cluster here. So every square on the grid that's part of that building space will be counted when we're determining who controls it. We also have tombs, which look like this. They're kind of like a purple, rocky looking area. We have this tombs over here, which is only 1 square. And then we have this tombs over here, which spans 3 squares. So again, this is all considered 1 tombs area, but it's 3 different squares. Then we have the canal, which looks like this. It's like a straight line with 2 dark lines on the sides, and this spans all the way across the middle of the map here. This is 1 canal, and it spans 11 squares of this grid. So we're going to have to look at discs on all 11 squares when we're determining who controls the canal. Then we have stone pathways. They look like this. For example, this stone pathway takes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, whereas this stone pathway only takes up 2 squares. Then we have the wood pathways. They look like this. This one here takes up 4 squares, but this wood pathway only takes up 1 square. Finally, we have the city walls, which look like this. Same thing as the pathways, like this city wall takes up 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, but this city wall takes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. Now these ruins all score slightly differently, and there's a little reminder on the board, but I find that these point values that are printed on the board are very confusing. And like I said earlier, understanding this endgame scoring is the #1 thing to hammer home when you're teaching this game to a new player. So I've organized the scoring on this reference sheet here in a way that makes sense to me, and this is what I've been using to kind of help the other players in my group grasp all the different scoring, because once you wrap your head around how everything scores, the rest of the game is a piece of cake. So let's go over this. I'm going to set up an example. This is a game that just ended, and we're going to walk through all the final scoring, and I'll show you how to give out points. So we will start by scoring the buildings. Again, the buildings are these red brick clusters, and the buildings always score first and second place points. It's the only ruin in the game that scores first and second. It's always number of squares times 2 to first place, and number of squares times 1 to second place. So these are printed here on the board. As you can see, this building is 4 squares, so it pays out 8 points to first place and 4 points to second place. Now these point values are pretty easy to see on the buildings because it has like a first and second place value right next to each other, and it's within the confines of the building. But when you look at these other printed numbers, a lot of times it's hard to tell which ruin these numbers belong to. So there's a formula to calculate all this, and that's what I have printed here on the player reference guide. So when you score the buildings, you count all the discs in those squares. This is the only ruin where you count all the discs there. Whichever player has the most discs within that building gets the first place points, and the second most discs gets the second place points. Pretty straightforward. I'll explain ties here in a moment. Just follow me through my example. So here, yellow has 3 discs in this building. Blue has 2 discs. Red and green each have 1 disc. So we have a clear winner, it's yellow. Yellow gets 8 points. We also have a clear second place, it's blue. Blue gets 4 points. It's also worth noting that the stars mean nothing in the endgame scoring, so you can totally ignore the stars. You're just counting the number of discs there. Now we move to this building. This is also worth 8 and 4 points, but here we have a tie for first. Blue has 2 discs and red has 2 discs. Whenever you have a tie for first, you add first plus second place points and share them evenly among the tied players. There is no second place when there's a tie for first. So here we have 12 divided by 2 players, which is 6. Red and blue each get 6 points, and the other players get nothing. If there's a remainder, you always round down. Now we have one more building to score, and it's this one. Now this one is only 3 squares big, so this only pays 6 points to first place and 3 points to second place. However, you'll notice blue is the only player in that building, so when that happens, you get first and second place points. So here, blue gets 9 points. And it's worth noting, if there's ever a tie for second place in the buildings, then the tied players simply share the second place points and round down any remainders. And that is all the buildings. Now we move to the canals. Now the rest of this scoring, you're only going to count the visible discs, and that means the discs that are on the tops of the stacks. So let's look at the canal. On this map, we only have one long canal, but sometimes you'll have several canals, and the canals are worth as many points as there are squares on the canal. So it's number of squares times 1. This canal takes up 11 squares, so whoever controls this canal gets 11 points. Very simple. So we look along the canal and we count the discs on top. So here we can see red has 1, 2, 3. Blue has 1, just 1. Yellow has 1, 2. And green has 1, 2, 3, 4. So green controls this canal. Green gets all 11 points. If there's ever a tie for that, you just share the points among the tied players and round down. There is no second place for canals. Then we move to the tombs. Now the tombs are always 3, 4, or 6 points as they're printed on the board. So this tombs here is worth 4 points. And again, you're only looking at the topmost disc. So green controls this tomb. Green gets 4 points. Then we move over to this tomb. This tomb spans 3 squares. So we look at the discs on all 3 squares. But again, we're only looking at the top discs. So here, blue has 1 disc. Yellow has 1 disc, and red has 1 disc. That is a 3-way tie, so you will split these points evenly among those players and round down. This tomb here is worth 6 points. So blue gets 2, yellow gets 2, and red gets 2. Finally, we have to score the wood paths, stone paths, and city walls. Every one of these is worth a flat 2 points, so it's easy to remember how this stuff scores. You just have to make sure that you count the entire length of the path when you're looking at who controls it. So let's do all the wood pathways first. Here we have a wood path. Red is the only disc on it. Red gets 2 points. Here we have a wood path that runs down and around. Red has 1 disc. Green has 1 disc. Again, we're only looking at the topmost discs on this wood path. So that is 2 points divided by 2 tied players. Red gets 1, green gets 1. We have a sneaky little wood path right here. Green has 1, yellow has 1. They split the 2 points, so they each get 1 point. Now we have one more wood path. It's this really long one here, but again, it's only worth 2 points. Green has 1 disc, blue has 1 disc, and red has 1 disc. That is 2 points divided by 3. Round down, those players get nothing. Now we move on to the stone paths. You score these the same way. Up here we have a stone path going over and down. Red has 2 discs, green has 1, red gets 2 points. Then we have a stone path over here. This one's a little tricky to see. It runs all the way down and through this building. So red is on this path and yellow. They are tied, so red and yellow each get 1 point. Green is the only player on this stone path. Green gets 2 points. Yellow is the only player on this stone path. Again, we're looking at the top discs. Yellow gets 2 points for this. And blue is the only player on this path. Blue gets 2 points for this one. And that's all the stone paths. Finally, we do city walls the same way. Each city wall is worth 2 points. Up here we have red, who is on this city wall. They are the only player there. Red gets 2 points for that. This city wall, we have green with 1, blue with 1, but yellow with 2. So yellow wins this city wall for 2 points. Now we come over here. Green has 1, red has 1, blue has 1. 2 points divided by 3 is 0. So these players don't get anything for this city wall. And the final city wall is over here. Blue has 2 discs and green and red each have 1. So blue wins this city wall for 2 points. And that is all the endgame scoring. The players add up all their artifacts that they just got and add those to any points they got during the game for capturing, and the player with the most points wins. There is no official tiebreaker in the rulebook, so if you have any ideas for an official tiebreaker, let me know that in the comments below. I would love to read about it. The final thing I need to touch on is the rules changes for 2 players. Again, when you play this at 2, each player will control 2 colors. For all intents and purposes, the colors act independently as their own color. So you can't mix and match your colors. You still have to treat them separately. It's just that 2 different colors will be scoring points for you. So how do you handle captures? Well, you can capture your own piece with the other color that you control. But what's interesting is when you capture your own piece, you can decide to take the points, or you can return the disc back to your supply and not take the points. And that creates an interesting little dynamic, a little ebb and flow or push and pull between the players as you can kind of pace yourself appropriately. Should I take these points now, or should I get this disc back to give me more flexibility later? That's the most significant change I've noticed at 2 players as far as the feel of the game. Now, there's another rule to keep in mind, and that is when you place an explorer at 2 players, you have to move an explorer of that color. So if I place a blue explorer this time, after I roll the die, I must move a blue explorer. Otherwise, the game works the exact same way at 2 players. When the game ends, you score each color individually, but whichever colors you control, you will get the points for. And that is how you play Indus. I think I did a pretty clean tutorial today, at least based on the English rulebook. There's always a chance that something could be mistranslated and things like that. So as always, I will put a rules clarification section in the video description just in case anything comes up in the future. So check that out while you're watching the video just to be safe. But for now, let's get into my rating and review of Indus. So keep in mind, this is a very light and simple filler game, but it does have some teeth to it. It's kind of a spicy little game. There's lots of mean player interaction here. You are going at each other, trying to capture your opponents, trying to take over the area majority. It is a very cutthroat game, and I love everything about that. It's also a dice game, which I tend to like, especially when dice games do something that I've never seen before. And what this game does is it uses that grid system combined with your explorers, and I really like how the push your luck comes from which explorers you can move. You can set yourself up strategically so that different rolls will benefit you in different areas, but ultimately, the more you roll the die, the fewer choices you have as far as which people you can move. And I think that is such a cool system. I've never seen anything like that in a game, and I also like how you have to pace yourself through the 3 different levels of explorers. You only have a couple of your professors, your 3-star guys, and those you have to be very careful when and where you place them. Yes, they give you 3 rolls to get what you want, but if you go out there and you get captured, you're giving 3 points to the opponent who captures your professor. So it's an interesting little balance there of when and where to place your different levels of explorers. Just a lot of fun choices to consider throughout, and that's why this game gets a very solid 8.5 out of 10. Now remember, I use a school grading scale with my rating, so at 8.5 is a solid B, so it's not like a top tier game. It's not going to change your life, but it is a very solid and punchy little game. I just really like, the punch that this packs into about 30 minutes. I love how the game develops, how the board state is always changing. It's a very dynamic game as players capture each other, and then all of a sudden you have these little traps out there, and you have to consider, oh no, if I roll a 3, I'm going to be instantly captured by this player. So I might not want to put my explorer here, but I still want to go for the majority scoring over there. And there's just all these things that you're constantly thinking about, but it's not like AP inducing. It's just really fun. It's a fun game to consider all these choices, all the different ways to score points, buildings and canals and all the little pathways. And then every time you play the game, you're going to have a different map because of the modular setup. So what's not to like here? It plays well at all player counts. I think the 2-player experience is kind of unique because you have that extra little rule where you can capture yourself and kind of get some discs back. Now that does create a little more of a thinky experience at 2 players. So the 2-player game might run a tad longer than 3 and 4. I really like this at 4 players though, because it's such an all-out competition for this limited space. Everybody's going at each other, capturing, getting captured, taking over majorities, and taking some big risks, rolling 2 and 3 times and then hitting the number you need on the 3rd roll. It's just so exciting when you can make that happen. So it has those emotional highs and lows. And again, I cannot stress this enough, all in about 30 to 40 minutes. And one thing I love about this game is the capturing rule, because it makes it risky to go anywhere on the board. Every time you place a disc, there's a risk. And that's what I love about this game. You never feel totally safe until you can get that second disc on a space. I love all the variety from game to game as well. Lots of replay value here because you get to set the board up differently every time. I wish there were even more tiles in this box for even more different setups. This game is ripe for lots of expansion content, but unfortunately the game never went anywhere, and who knows if it will ever be reprinted. I think a big reason it fell flat is because of the board layout, and that's really the only reason my rating is not higher, because it's such a headache to look out at the board at first and explain the scoring to new players and just to wrap your head around all that and then make sure everybody's on the same page. But once it clicks, it becomes very easy. So you have to give this game a couple plays to really come to life. And then by that third play, I can almost guarantee you that you will be breezing through this game and everything will make sense to you. Hopefully my player reference guide will help you, through the scoring and everything. But I just really think that the game could benefit from a graphics overhaul. And just to be clear, I really like the artwork in the game. I like all the beige. I like how it's this overhead shot of all these ruins, and there's a lot of little details in the art. So I appreciate thematically, what the artist was going for. I'm just saying functionally, it's kind of a headache to figure out how all this stuff scores at a glance. So if someone were to reprint this game, I would say, make the board a little bigger for one, and then also make it very easy to glance out and see how everything scores. But I like the muted colors. It makes the player discs a little more prevalent so you can easily see where everyone is, and it just has a neat look to the game. I just wish it was a little easier to see what was going on. So anyway, that is Indus. Have you ever played this game? Does this look like one you'd like to try? Does it look like it reminds you of any other games? And what is your idea for an official tiebreaker for Indus? I wish this game had a tiebreaker, so I'd love to know your ideas in the comments below. If you like this content and you want to help keep the channel alive, just check the video description below. There are lots of ways you can help out. The easiest way to help is to make sure you're subscribed and make sure all your board gaming friends are subscribed as well, right here on YouTube at undiscovered_games. As long as my subscriber count keeps going up, I will keep posting videos on a regular basis. You can also become a channel member and support this channel for less than $2 a month right here on YouTube. That gives you early access to all my videos. It also gives you access to all the exclusive members only videos. Every third episode is visible to members only, and there are now 7 members only episodes to catch up on. I have an 8th one coming out shortly. That's going to be my first impressions of 3 more low-rated games that were voted on by the channel members. Again, I thought Indus was going to win that poll, and I went ahead and played it. Lo and behold, we found ourselves a hidden gem, and that's the most important thing. So that's what this is all about, finding and sharing lesser-known games. Again, members, you can look for my first impressions on those other 3 games coming out in a few weeks on episode 75. But first, I'm going to post episode 74, which is going to be another surprise game. Then I'll get back into the voting, so you can look for some more polls here in a few weeks. Thanks for being here, everybody. I really appreciate you watching and joining me today. I'll be back with another great undiscovered game here in a couple weeks. We'll see you then.